Hello and welcome back to another YouTube video. I'm doing my top lane tier list for patch 13.18, so if you enjoy my content, like and subscribe, and let's get into it. To begin with, there were a couple of changes this patch, not a huge amount of adjustments though, as the tier list is mostly going to stay the same. They were fairly minor in the changes they made, mostly because they were towards pro play, Worlds being the main highlight at the moment. This is the second to last patch of Worlds kind of adjustments. 13.19 is going to be the one where we see the most changes, so let's cover them. To begin with, there was actually a new champion released this patch, Briar. She's terrible. In her current state, she does not perform very well. She's something kind of akin to Nocturne in being a dive AD champion, can benefit from items such as Stridebreaker, Gore Drinker, and Triforce. Her highest win rate is Gore Drinker at the moment, but that is a very limited sample size, so be wary of that. But it does help when she is low on HP, and she can really benefit from that item. Other than that, items like your Sterix, your Cleaver, Death Stance all do work quite nicely on her. So those are the items you're going to be looking for. But the win rate is bad at the moment. I definitely recommend trying this champion in things like Practice Tool, Normals, Blind, Flex, if that's where you practice things, before taking into solo queue, as it is going to be very hard to pilot when you are first timing. It has a very interesting gimmick in being uncontrollable and only really having the ability to cancel that using your E. So yeah, definitely do practice it, but cool new champion, unique playstyle, will probably get buffed up to where she should be in the next couple of patches, but hopefully we don't see any like huge swings, as then we end up with like either balance thrashing or just in general having an overwhelming champion who is a stat stick. So moving on, Aurelia is the first actual top laner to be adjusted this patch. She had 15 seconds taken off her ult at all ranks. Hasn't done a huge amount. It's mostly going to benefit people who know the champion and can really make use of that ult window. But other than that, I was hoping they would swing a bit harder, maybe give her a bit more baseline durability, a bit of base health, to really help her, like, I mean, across all ranks, low elo, mid elo, high elo, elite skew, and then, of course, competitive. Didn't really seem to want to take this approach, went really lightly. She does support a decent win rate in Emerald Plus, but to really push her into competitive, they would have to swing a bit harder. I don't think we're going to see more than 1 or 2 games of this champion, which is unfortunate. She's a very nice champion to see, really high skill, can really be healthy as a thing to watch within competitive. Of course, the shy Fiora Aurelia is always going to be kind of my favourite moment in Worlds, if you remember that fight, semi-final, I believe that was. So Gwen is going to stay in the A tier. She had a bit of base health growth, which not going to do a huge amount in elite skew, but then definitely going to help her in low elo, where she can benefit from getting more levels as the games tend to drag on for a lot longer. Win rate will probably adjust to about 1% gain. Alongside that, for the most part, she was receiving passive jungle buffs to really help her clear speed. We'll definitely see Gwen jungle at Worlds. It looks like it is performing very well in the best hands. Doesn't have a great win rate, but then that sometimes doesn't matter, as pros tend to just go off feel and clear speed and how much the champ is valued as a flex pick. So things like Gwen, Rumble can be quite strong in that regard. Kennen is going to move up to the A tier. Kennen had his energy cost on E go from 100 to 80 to 80 flat. Alongside that, he had his ult adjusted, so it now goes down by 20 seconds each rank, rather than just being a solid 120 seconds, I believe, or it might have been 140. But yeah, it now scales with level, so that's scales down with points in the ability, which is pretty big. Definitely allows more uptime in solo queue, more of a solo queue focus buff. Definitely, as gonna have it more have more uptime on this ability just in general. So quite good there. Really did kind of need the buffs, but Kennen mid is really where a lot of his power shines at the moment. That is where a lot of also win rate is going to be on this champion, so I definitely recommend trying Kennen mid at the moment. It will probably get adjusted or nerfed at some point, like all the top laners who end up being too strong in mid do, whether it's magic resist down or just some sort of durability change. Tryndamere is staying in the S tier. He is still a really strong pick, even with 2 lots of nerfs to kind of compensate for the 50 attack range gain. He is still performing really well. I believe his base AD's gone down by 6 at this point, and his health growth has gone down by 7. Overall, this champion just did not need the 50 attack range. It feels so obnoxious to play against. This champ just needs a kit reshape. It's not healthy for a champion to have that much range whilst being unkillable, as it makes it really obnoxious to play against if you are a ranged champion, as he now has the ability to reach you from longer, making it hard to peel. Overall, it's just not healthy for this kind of a champion. As a stat stick, Tryndamere can be really obnoxious when, he has access to range, mobility, of course, being things like Gale Force or Cripple with Stride Breaker. Not the angle I would have taken if I was to buff this champion, but it seems to be the way Riot want to go, and they're sticking with it. So, Diamond 2+, which is kind of where I'd say the high-elo bracket really lies. Of course, people will have different certain opinions, whether that's Masters, higher than Masters. The main ones I'm definitely going to recommend are Aatrox. Even with the adjustments towards his damage profile being AD pushed more towards magic damage, we did see a gain towards his lethality builds. However, the bruiser builds are definitely outperforming at the moment. Stride Breaker is the way you want to go, and you can still opt into things like Shrouders, Cleaver, Sterix, Death Stance, Hole Breaker. There's loads of really good options for Aatrox at the moment. He is really benefiting from a lot of the items in the game, and he has really strong scaling, does really good DPS. Definitely consider playing Aatrox if you are playing in the higher ranks. Same goes for Darius. Really good itemization at the moment. Things like Stridebreaker and Triforce both have really good situations for him. However, Stridebreaker tends to outperform if you really value that cripple. The Triforce tends to be better if you are split pushing and you can itemize things like Hull Breaker confidently. But yeah, Stridebreaker, if you're going things like Dead Man's, you can go things like Sterix. He has really high base AD, some of the highest base AD in the game, which is why Sterix and Deadman's work really quite nicely on him. You can go things like Death Stance. Used to be a lot better on Darius, but after the nerfs towards Death Stance, doesn't quite perform to the same level on a lot of champions. It is definitely more of a snowball-orientated item, but you can still go things like GA if you can't really afford to go the full Death Stance, and you do need the stopwatch and durability. Other than that, Gwen is the last champion who I'd really recommend in D2+. She's performing quite well there, especially as a flex pick. Has really strong laning phases against most tanks in the game. Very high skill, has a decent amount of scaling as well. Overall, just a really good champion to play in the current meta. Definitely lots of benefits there. And for Plat Plus below, I'm mostly going to talk about the easier champions to play, as they can really just carry you up. I would not recommend ego picking champions in low elo, as it can be a very good way of just gatekeeping yourself, of learning a lot of the core mechanics rather than focusing on just core gameplay mechanics, rather than focusing on just the mechanics of the champion, which kind of have its own benefits in learning that champion. But I'd recommend playing things like your Mundos, your Garens, your Malphites, as all these champions can just allow you to learn and watch a game whilst playing a relatively simple champion, which can sometimes just be the best way to climb. Garen, simplistic kit, but does a lot of DPS, has a really strong ultimate, good baseline durability, can just beat a lot of the high skill champions as well, definitely, and doesn't even perform too badly in elite play, especially if you learn the champion well alongside Malphite. Both these champions can perform well in elite. Mundo does have a lot harder of a time performing in elite play, and I would definitely recommend hopping off Mundo fairly early, but he's still a really good tank in low elo. Doesn't have a hard CC, but a really good health regen, really good damage, kind of the perfect champion to really learn as a top laner, but still, yeah, good champion. Does fall off with the elites kind of levels. Malphite, however, really good team fighting ultimate, really good into high AD comps. Just be careful when you're picking this champion to AP and things like Silas, as he can have a really hard time. So yeah, that is mostly what I wanted to talk about. So thank you guys for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.